Today, we uncover the shocking truth about UK baking powder. You've all got a bit of it in your cupboard right now, and I'd bet good money you've never once looked at the ingredients label. Why would you? It's baking powder. It's the most boring thing in the baking aisle. A tiny bit of raising agent you spoon into a sponge cake a couple times a year. Nobody thinks twice about it. But here's what's actually going on. Several of the most popular baking powders sold in UK supermarkets right now contain wheat flour hidden inside, to bulk them up. Not starch, not corn flour, actual wheat flour sitting right there inside your baking powder, and it isn't mentioned anywhere on the front of the packet. People with celiac disease and wheat allergies have been caught out by this. They've made entire gluten-free cakes using specialist gluten-free flour, only to discover afterwards that the baking powder they used contained wheat the whole time. The gluten-free flour was pointless. The baking powder undid all of it. And that's not even the most surprising thing we found. One product on this list contains a compound that's used to make plaster of Paris. Another brand has been sold to 6 different corporations over the decades. It's been passed from an American giant to an Irish conglomerate to a dessert mix company in Doncaster. And it's still out there on the shelf telling you it's been delivering quality since 1842. One product openly warns you, right there on the label, that the white powder inside the pot may contain visible black specks. And the brand that most British people trust most with their baking, the one that's been in the nation's kitchens for generations, lists one of its ingredients simply as starch, with no further explanation of what kind of starch it actually is. So we've gone through all the major baking powder brands currently sold in UK supermarkets, and in this video, we're exposing the 9 products you need to avoid. Then at the end, we'll go through the handful that are actually still worth buying. And here's the broader context that makes all of this matter. Baking powder was invented in England in 1843. The original formula had 2 ingredients: bicarbonate of soda and cream of tartar, a simple alkali and a natural acid derived from wine production. Clean, simple, entirely transparent, and it worked brilliantly. In the decades since, the food industry has quietly replaced that simple formula with synthetic phosphate salt systems, cheap grain fillers, and in some cases ingredients that have absolutely no business being in a raising agent. Most consumers have no idea this has happened because nobody reads the back of a baking powder pot. That assumption that baking powder is too simple and boring to need checking is exactly what these companies are relying on. And it's exactly the kind of assumption that Protect Our Plates exists to challenge. But before we get into it, I want to ask you a favor. If you think people deserve to know what's actually inside the food they're buying, if you think these companies should be held to a higher standard, then hit the hype button on this video. You'll find it right below the screen. And every single time someone hits it, it pushes this video out to more people. It doesn't cost you anything, it takes half a second, and the more people who see this, the more pressure builds on these companies to actually clean up their products. That's genuinely how this works. Views and hype signals tell the algorithm that people care about this kind of content, and the algorithm responds by showing it to more people, which means more consumers finding out what's in their food, which means more people asking difficult questions at the checkout. So if that matters to you, hit the hype button now, and let's get into it. Number 9. Dr. Oetker Baking Powder. The standard tub, 170 grams, sold at Tesco, Asda, Morrisons and pretty much everywhere else for around £1.40. This is the one. This is the brand that's been sitting in British kitchens for decades. When most people picture baking powder, they picture this red and white pot. Dr. Oetker's own marketing tells you they've been pouring heart and soul into baking for over 100 years, and that they're a trusted name since 1891. And for a lot of people, that heritage is exactly why they reach for it without a second thought. But here's what you're actually buying. The active acid in this baking powder is E450, diphosphates. That's a synthetic phosphate chemical derived from phosphoric acid. It's the same phosphate compound family that you'll find in processed meats, in fizzy drinks, and in powdered ready meals. It's an industrial food additive, and it's now the primary raising acid in the UK's most recognisable baking brand. Now, here's something worth knowing about phosphates more broadly. The average person in the UK already consumes more phosphate than is recommended, mostly through processed foods and soft drinks. Multiple studies have linked excessive phosphate intake to reduced kidney function and to weakening of the bones over time. The amounts in baking powder alone are small. We're not saying one Victoria sponge is going to harm you, but it's the cumulative picture that researchers are increasingly concerned about, and the fact that it's now quietly present in your baking powder is part of that picture. And then there's the third ingredient. It just says starch. That's it. No clarification, no indication of whether it's cornstarch, wheat starch, potato starch, or anything else. For a brand that asks you to trust it with your family's baking, the decision not to tell you what kind of starch they're putting in the product is a strange way to show that trust. Here's the historical context that makes this especially interesting. Dr. Oetker's original formula from the 1890s traces back through a chemist named Louis Marquand to an older phosphate-based recipe. The original chemistry was built around calcium phosphates. What they use today is industrially manufactured disodium diphosphate. It's not the same compound. The formula has been quietly reformed over the decades to whatever is cheapest to produce at scale, while the heritage branding has stayed exactly the same. Number 8. Dr. Oetker baking powder sachets, 6 individual 5-gram sachets, sold at Morrisons and Ocado for around £1.30. Same formula as the tub. E450 diphosphates, sodium carbonates, and mystery starch. Everything we just said about number 9 applies here too. But this product has an additional layer worth talking about, which is what they've done with the packaging. Dr. Oetker has taken that already industrially formulated phosphate salt system, divided it into individual pre-measured 5-gram portions, wrapped each one in its own plastic-backed sachet, and sold it to you as a convenient premium product. The pitch is that it saves you the hassle of measuring, but most people are perfectly capable of measuring a teaspoon of powder, and a standard tub of baking powder costs a fraction of what these sachets cost per gram. You are paying significantly more per use for the exact same synthetic raising agent purely because it comes in smaller packaging. There's also a practical problem here that doesn't get mentioned. Once you open a sachet, if your recipe doesn't call for the full 5 grams, you've got a torn open sachet of powder with no lid and no way to reseal it properly. The convenience falls apart almost immediately in real kitchen use. Meanwhile, 6 sachets means 6 times the packaging waste compared to one tub containing the same total amount of powder. It's a product that costs more, creates more waste, and delivers no improvement whatsoever in what's actually inside it. Number 7. Sainsbury's baking powder, 160 grams, 52 pence. Now here's where the category gets interesting. Because Sainsbury's doesn't do the wheat flour thing, their filler is rice flour, so the product is at least gluten-free. But the active acid is still disodium diphosphate, the same E450 synthetic phosphate we've been talking about throughout this list. And the rice flour raises a question that's worth asking out loud. Baking powder is supposed to be a raising agent. So what exactly is rice flour doing in it? It serves absolutely no raising function whatsoever. It's there purely as an anti-caking filler to bulk out the product and stop the powder from clumping during storage. That means a meaningful proportion of what's inside this pot isn't raising agent at all. It's rice flour. You're buying baking powder, and a portion of what you're paying for is rice flour that you didn't ask for and don't need. This is also almost certainly the most widely purchased own-brand baking powder in the country, given Sainsbury's market position. And the vast majority of the people buying it have no idea that rice flour is in there, because nobody reads the back of a baking powder pot. That's exactly what these companies are counting on. Now, if you think 52 pence sounds like a reasonable deal, here's something worth thinking about. Once you subtract the cost of the packaging, the transport costs, and Sainsbury's margin, what's actually left to pay for the powder itself? The maths on genuinely sourced, properly tested ingredients at that price point doesn't really add up. The price is telling you something. Number 6. Borex baking powder, available in both the 100-gram and 200-gram versions, sold at Tesco and Asda for around £1.10. The packaging says quality since 1842, And for once, the heritage claim is real. This brand genuinely does have an extraordinary history. George Borwick started selling his baking powder in 1844. Within 5 years, it had received a personal recommendation from Queen Victoria's private baker. By the mid-19th century, Borwick's was reportedly the highest-selling baking powder in the entire world. It supplied households and kitchens across the British Empire. In 1870, it received a royal warrant from the Queen of the Netherlands. This was a genuinely significant British food brand. In 1855, a food analyst named Dr. Hassel examined the Borwick's formula and found it contained tartaric acid, soda, ground rice, and a small amount of wheat flour. The tartaric acid, a natural acid derived from wine production, was the key functional ingredient. That's what made the product work. Now look at what's in it today. The tartaric acid is gone. It's been replaced by acid sodium pyrophosphate, a synthetic phosphate compound. The ground rice is gone. What remains is wheat flour as the primary filler, and that wheat flour is not gluten-free, which is particularly odd given that the rest of the market moved away from wheat-based fillers years ago. Most own-brand baking powders now use rice flour or corn flour. Borwick's is still using wheat flour in 2026. But here's the ownership story that really puts the quality since 1,842 inches claim in context. In 1955, Borwick's was sold to a company called H.J. Green. In 1964, H.J. Green was acquired by Pillsbury, the American Food Corporation. In 1989, Pillsbury was taken over by Grand Metropolitan. In 1990, the brand moved to Dalgety. In 1998, it was sold to Kerry Group of Ireland. And today, Borwick's baking powder is manufactured by a company called Green's Desserts UK Limited, based in Doncaster. The company that earned the quality since 1,842 inches reputation has not existed for over 70 years. That claim on the packaging belongs to a brand name that's been passed through the hands of 6 different corporations across 3 countries. The formula is different, the ownership is different, the only thing that hasn't changed is the nostalgic marketing. Number 5, M&S baking powder, 150 grams, around £1.35, sold at M&S stores and on Ocado. This is not just food. This is M&S food. If you've watched British television at any point in the last 30 years, you know that campaign. M&S has spent decades positioning itself as the premium choice, the food range that's a cut above, the option for people who care about quality and aren't willing to settle. So let's look at what's in M&S phosphate, and the filler is unlabeled starch or wheat flour. Put it back. What you're looking for is either monocalcium phosphate as the acid, or at minimum a clearly named allergen-free filler like cornstarch or maize starch. Gluten in the filler. And if a brand is willing to tell you the percentage breakdown of each ingredient on the label, that's a very good sign. Transparency in baking powder is genuinely rare. Here are the 3 worth buying. First, Dove's Farm. Their baking powder, also sold under the free label for the explicitly gluten-free range, is 130 grams, around £1.20 to £1.60 depending on where you buy it. And it's available at Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Ocado, and in most health food shops. This is the standout option on the list. This is a mineral-based calcium phosphate, considerably closer to the chemistry used in original 19th century baking powders than the synthetic disodium diphosphate that almost every other brand uses. It's considered a cleaner, more natural acid component, and it's what serious bakers and food professionals say is what's on the label. Dove's Farm actually tells you the percentage of each ingredient: monocalcium phosphate, 42%, organic cornstarch, 42%. No other baking powder we looked at, Dr. Oetker's case, doesn't even tell you what kind of starch they're using. Dove's Farm tells you exactly what's in it and in what proportion. That kind of transparency is genuinely unusual in this category. The filler is organic cornstarch, clearly identified, no allergen risk, and organically sourced. The product is certified gluten-free by Celiac UK. It's vegan-friendly, and it won a gold star at the Guild of Fine Foods Great Taste Awards back in 2009. And Dove's Farm itself is an independent British company started by Michael and Claire Marriage on making a real product with actual transparency about what's in it. Second, Dr. Oetker gluten-free baking powder. Now, we've already put Dr. Oetker's standard products on the avoid list, so this might seem like a strange recommendation, but there's a meaningful difference between the standard product and the gluten-free version that makes it worth highlighting. The gluten-free version, available as a 170-gram tub or as individual 5-gram sachets, still uses E450 diphosphates as the raising acid. We're not going to pretend that's ideal, but the critical difference is the filler. In the gluten-free version, the filler is clearly identified as maize starch, not the vague starch of the standard tub. You know what it is. It's named. And there's no wheat flour. The product is genuinely gluten-free and allergen-safe for people with wheat sensitivities. Pre-measured single portions with no risk of the tub absorbing moisture and going inactive over time. It's not perfect, but it's meaningfully better than the standard product. Third, Waitrose Cook's Ingredients Baking Powder, 160 grams, around £1.30, available at Waitrose and on Ocado. This one still uses E450 as the raising acid, so it's not at the top of the table. But the reason it makes this list is specifically as its filler. Waitrose's own brand product, at a similar or lower price, uses rice flour instead, so it's gluten-free, there are no allergen concerns, and there's no black speck warning like Morrison's has. It's a clean, simple product that does what it says, without hidden surprises. In the world of mainstream, that's the correct ratio, mix them together, and that's it. That's proper baking powder. That's exactly how Alfred Bird made it in 1843 when he invented it right here in England. 2 natural ingredients, no synthetic phosphates, no wheat flour, no rice flour fillers, no mystery starch. Cream centuries. You can find it in the baking aisle of most supermarkets. A pot of cream of tartar and a box of bicarb will last you a very long time, and every batch of baking powder you make from them will be cleaner and simpler than anything in the avoid list. It's worth knowing about. That's it for today. If this video opened your eyes to something you didn't expect from something as seemingly simple and harmless as baking powder, then hit the hype button below if you haven't already. It genuinely makes a real difference to how many people get to see this, and the more people who know, the better. And leave a comment below telling us which food product you think we should cover next. We read every single one, and your suggestions genuinely shape what we investigate. Don't forget to subscribe as well, because we're going to keep doing exactly this, going through the products on UK supermarket shelves and finding out what's actually in them. Until next time, read the label, question the packaging, and protect your plate.